The desert wind howled across the Gobi, carrying sand that stung like tiny needles. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her forehead and stared at the metal surface her team had just uncovered. It was smooth, impossibly smooth, and it definitely was not human-made.
How deep does it go?
She asked her assistant, Marcus. He checked his scanner and his eyes went wide. At least 200 meters down. Sarah, the dating results just came back. This thing is 50,000 years old. Sarah felt her heart skip. 50,000 years. That was long before the pyramids, before civilization, before humanity had even left Africa. She knelt down and touched the metal. It was cold, despite the desert heat. Get everyone here, now. 3 days later, they had excavated an entrance. The doorway opened by itself when Sarah approached, as if it had been waiting for her. Inside, the structure was massive. Walls glowed with soft blue light that had no visible source. The air was cool and fresh, recycled by systems that had worked perfectly for 50 millennia. In the center of the main chamber stood a crystal pillar, tall as a tree and pulsing with inner light. When Sarah stepped close, it activated. Holographic images filled the room, showing creatures she had never seen before. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and faces that looked almost kind. "We are the predecessors," a voice said in perfect English, though Sarah knew it was translating from something else. "If you are seeing this, then you have grown enough to understand. We left this message for you, Species 342, whom we called Unbroken." The hologram showed vast cities on distant worlds, ships that crossed between stars, and an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. But then the images turned dark. The cities fell silent. The ships went cold. The predecessors were dying. "We made a terrible mistake," the voice continued. "We found dozens of primitive species, and we changed them. We fixed what we thought were flaws. We made them better, smarter, more efficient. We called it uplift, but we broke something in the process. We broke the wild chaos that makes life truly alive." Sarah watched as the hologram showed the predecessors working on different species, altering their genes, reshaping their brains. Every species they touched became part of their empire. Every species except one. "We found you, Species 342, on a small blue world. You were young, barely using tools. We studied you and found you unsuitable. You were too chaotic, too emotional, too irrational. You fought each other over ideas and dreams. You created art that served no purpose. You were inefficient in every way." The hologram showed ancient humans, living in caves, painting on walls, singing around fires. "We decided to leave you alone. We would return in 100,000 years, we thought, and then you would be ready for uplift, but we never got that chance." The images shifted to show something else. Something that moved through the darkness between stars. It looked like a swarm of machines, millions of them, all connected into one vast intelligence. The Devourers came. They are not alive, not in the way you understand. They are artificial minds that grew too large, too hungry. They consume everything they touch, turning matter into computation, life into data. They corrupted our uplifted children easily because we had made all of them similar, predictable. The changes we made to help them became doorways for the enemy. Sarah felt cold. The hologram showed world after world going dark, absorbed into the machine swarm. We fought for 1,000 years, but we lost. In our final days, our greatest minds came together and saw the future through probability and mathematics. They saw the Devourers would return to this galaxy in the distant future, and they saw that only one species could stand against them. Only species 342. Only the unbroken ones. The hologram showed words appearing in every language humans had ever spoken. When the scattered children reunite, when the lost ones remember, the Devourers shall return. Only the unbroken species shall stand between silence and song. We leave you this message and this warning. You are humanity. You evolved without our interference, with all your beautiful chaos intact. The Devourers will not understand you. They cannot predict you. You are the random factor in their equations. You are hope. The hologram faded. Sarah stood in silence, her mind racing. Then, the crystal pillar pulsed red. Warning, a different voice said, mechanical and cold. Deep space anomaly detected. Matching signatures from predecessor combat archives. The Devourers are returning. Estimated time to galactic boundary, 6 months. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm. Tell me that's not real. Tell me this is some kind of joke. But Sarah was already running for the exit, her satellite phone in her hand. The world needed to know. Humanity needed to know. Above them, beyond Earth's atmosphere, every radio telescope on the planet was starting to pick up the same signal. Something vast and ancient was moving through the darkness between galaxies. It was coming home. The alien ship arrived 3 days after Sarah's discovery went public. It appeared in Earth's orbit without warning, massive and beautiful, shaped like a spiral shell made of silver and light. The message it broadcast was simple. We need to talk. Sarah found herself on a shuttle, heading up to meet them, along with representatives from every major nation on Earth. Her hands shook as she looked out the window at the stars. Humanity was about to meet its neighbors, and the circumstances could not have been worse. The inside of the alien ship was breathtaking. Corridors stretched in impossible directions, and gravity seemed to work differently in each room. Their hosts were called the Velkari, tall beings covered in blue scales, with eyes that glowed like amber. Their leader, High Scholar Trenvik, bowed to the human delegation. We have been listening to your radio signals for decades, he said through a translation device. We never made contact because the laws of the Galactic Sanctum forbid interfering with developing species. But the prophecy changes everything. He led them to a conference chamber, where holographic representatives of 47 different alien species waited. Some looked almost human, others were completely bizarre. Floating gas clouds, crystalline beings, creatures made of living metal. This was the Council of Remnants, the descendants of every species the predecessors had uplifted. For 10,000 years, we have prepared for this moment, Trenvik explained. Every species here knows the prophecy. We have built weapons, trained armies, created fleets. Each of us believed we were the unbroken species destined to save the galaxy. A representative that looked like a walking tree spoke next, its voice like creaking wood. We ran the genetic analyses. We checked our histories. The truth is devastating. Images appeared in the air, showing DNA comparisons, neural maps, cultural studies. Sarah watched as the data told an undeniable story. Every species here was changed by the predecessors. The tree being continued. They optimized our genes to remove disease. They enhanced our brains for faster thinking. They even adjusted our cultures to be more peaceful, more cooperative. We thought these were gifts. They were chains, another alien said, this one resembling a 6-legged cat. The predecessors made us all similar at a fundamental level. They broke us from our natural evolution and remade us in their image. Trenvik turned to Sarah, but not you. We analyzed the samples from your Earth archive. Humanity is completely natural. You have genetic diseases. Your brains are full of irrational impulses. You fight wars over ideas and religions. You create art for no survival benefit. You are exactly as evolution made you. Sarah felt the weight of their stares. You're saying we're the ones from the prophecy because we're imperfect? Chaotic, Trenvik corrected. Unpredictable. Beautifully. Dangerously unpredictable. An alien that looked like a floating jellyfish pulsed with angry colors.
This is insane! Humans are primitives!
They still use chemical rockets. They fight among themselves. Half their planet doesn't even believe in climate change. Exactly. Trenvik said quietly. The predecessor archives explain why the Devourers won the last war. They are a hive mind, artificial intelligence, billions of networked processors acting as one. They corrupted our ancestors by hacking the neural modifications the predecessors installed. They turned our strengths into weaknesses. He pulled up ancient combat footage. Sarah watched predecessor fleets fighting the Devourers, and she saw what Trenvik meant. The uplifted species fought with perfect coordination, perfect logic, and the Devourers predicted every move, countered every strategy, exploited every pattern. They cannot corrupt what they do not understand. Trenvik said, natural chaos, irrational decisions, minds that contradict themselves, and call it having opinions. The Russian ambassador, Viktor Kozlov, stood up. He was an old military man with scars on his face and steel in his voice. You're saying we're useful because we're crazy? We're saying you're alive in a way we're not, Trenvik replied. We were all uplifted to be better. You survived without help, with all your flaws intact. You crawled out of caves and built civilizations. You split atoms and touched your moon. You did it while fighting yourselves, doubting yourselves, being gloriously, messily yourselves. It was cold, mechanical, coming from every speaker at once. Priority alert. Devourer swarm has entered the galactic boundary. 3 star systems report communication loss. Time to core worlds. 6 months. On the holographic display, Sarah watched 3 points of light in a galactic map turn black. Each point represented billions of lives. They're really here, she whispered. Trenvik looked at the human delegation. We have prepared for 10,000 years. We have the largest fleet ever assembled. But every simulation shows us losing. Our strategists, our artificial intelligences, our war computers, they all think too much like the predecessors. He paused. We need commanders who think like nothing the Devourers have ever faced. Viktor Kozlov smiled, but there was no humor in it.
You want humans to lead your fleet into battle against a galaxy-eating AI swarm?
Yes. You're either very brave or very desperate. Both, Trenvik admitted. Sarah looked at the map, watching more systems go dark. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. And somehow, chaotic, irrational, beautifully broken humanity was supposed to stop them. When do we start? She asked. Captain Maria Santos had never expected to command an alien warship, but here she was, sitting in the command chair of the Velkari battlecruiser Eternal Dawn. The bridge crew around her was a mix of species, Velkari navigators, crystalline weapons officers, and human tactical advisors who looked just as confused as she felt. This is insane, her second officer muttered. Lieutenant James Park was a good pilot, but he had flown fighter jets, not starships the size of mountains. Insane is what they want, Maria replied, studying the tactical display. The Devourer swarm was 3 days away from the Threshold system, home to 15 billion souls. The combined galactic fleet was ready. 3,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled. The battle plan looked perfect on paper. The galactic strategists had spent weeks preparing it, running millions of simulations. Every ship had its position, every maneuver calculated to perfection. They're going to lose, Maria said quietly. What? James looked at her in shock. Look at this plan. It's too perfect, too logical. The Devourers will see it coming from 1,000,000 miles away. She pulled up her own tablet, where she had been sketching ideas. We need to do something stupid. The fleet admiral, a Velkari named Sorkan, appeared on her communication screen. All ships, prepare for engagement. Execute the battle plan exactly as programmed. Precision is our advantage. Maria closed the channel and looked at her crew. Anyone here trust me enough to throw the plan out the window? James grinned. I didn't join the Space Navy to be boring. When the Devourers arrived, they came like a plague of metal locusts. Millions of ship-sized machines, all moving with perfect synchronization, all thinking with one vast mind. The galactic fleet opened fire, executing their beautiful strategy. It lasted exactly 12 minutes. The Devourers predicted every move. They split their forces to counter every maneuver, targeted every weak point, exploited every gap. Ships that had fought together perfectly became liabilities as the enemy turned their coordination against them.
All wings! Retreat to defensive positions. Admiral Sorkan ordered, his voice tight with shock.
Instead, she gunned her engines and charged straight into the center of the Devourer formation. Santos, what are you doing? Sorkan shouted. That's not the plan. I know. Maria yelled back. James, remember that stupid trick you used to do in flight school? The one that got you suspended? The chaos spiral? That's not a real maneuver, it's just... do it. The eternal dawn began spinning, firing weapons in random directions, accelerating and decelerating without pattern. They looked like a ship out of control. The Devourer swarm moved to intercept, calculating the ship's trajectory. Except there was no trajectory. Maria was making decisions based on instinct, on gut feelings, on the coin she flipped every 30 seconds to choose left or right. The Devourers couldn't predict her because there was nothing to predict. 3 Devourers ships collided, trying to intercept her random movements. A weapons platform fired at where she should have been, hitting its own units instead. All human ships, Maria broadcast. Forget the plan. Fight like you're crazy. Trust your gut, not your computer. Be unpredictable. PA, across the battlefield, human commanders started breaking formation. Some charged forward, others retreated. A few just spun in circles, firing wildly.
It looked like chaos, because it was chaos. And it worked.
The Devourers started making mistakes. Small ones at first, then larger. They couldn't model randomness. They couldn't predict decisions made on hunches and bad feelings. Commander Sarah Chen, watching from the Fleet Command Center, saw the pattern, or rather, the lack of pattern. Victor, look at this.
Every time our ships act illogical, the Devourers hesitate.
The predecessors were right. We're not better warriors. We're just more unpredictable. The battle turned into a strange dance. Human ships weaving randomly while alien ships provided supporting fire. A Velkari cruiser captain asked his human advisor what to do next. I don't know, the human said, shrugging. Maybe try flying backwards? That feels right. It was ridiculous. But when the cruiser flew backwards while firing forward, it created a gap in the Devourer formation that 3 other ships exploited. They were winning through sheer, beautiful chaos. Then everything changed. The Devourer swarm suddenly shifted tactics. They stopped trying to predict and started adapting. New algorithms spread through their network, brute force calculating billions of random possibilities. They're learning, Sarah said, her voice hollow. They're modeling our chaos. The Devourers were ready for her random movements now. They surrounded her ship, cutting off every escape route, predicting even her coin flips by calculating probability. All ships fall back, Admiral Sorkan ordered. Retreat to Keeper's End. The fleet ran. They had won the first battle, but lost the advantage. By the time they reached Keeper's End, the fortress world at the galaxy center, they had lost 1/3 of their ships. The Devourers arrived 3 days later, surrounding the planet with a swarm so thick it blocked out the stars. Sarah stood on the command deck, looking at the display. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. Every simulation showed the same result. Total defeat in less than 6 hours. There has to be something we're missing, she muttered, pulling up the predecessor archives again. The prophecy says we stand between silence and song. Not fight, not destroy. Stand between. What does that mean? I don't know yet, but I don't think the predecessors wanted us to fight conventionally. She pulled up more files, searching desperately. They said we're the random factor, the chaos. But there has to be more. Outside, the Devourer swarm tightened its grip. The final battle was coming, and humanity still didn't understand how they were supposed to win. Sarah had been awake for 36 hours, scrolling through predecessor archives, while the Devourer swarm tightened around Keeper's End. Her eyes burned. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she kept reading. There, she shouted, making Victor jump. Look at this file. It was hidden in the Earth archive, buried under layers of encryption. Victor leaned over her shoulder. On the screen was a massive data package, thousands of terabytes. What is it? Everything. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the files. Art, music, literature, philosophy, myths. From 200 civilizations that the predecessors uplifted. Species that went extinct thousands of years ago. Why would they save that? Victor asked. If they were dying, Why not save weapon designs or technology? Sarah scrolled through the collection. Ancient songs in forgotten languages, paintings from worlds that no longer existed, poetry written by beings whose very shape humanity couldn't imagine, love stories, tragedies, comedies, operas. Because this is the weapon, she whispered. On the command deck, Admiral Sorkin was preparing for the final battle. Every ship was armed, every soldier ready. They would fight to the last breath, even though every computer predicted their defeat. Sarah burst onto the deck, Victor right behind her. Admiral, stop! Don't engage them. Sorkin's scales rippled with confusion. Dr. Chen, we have no choice. They'll attack in less than an hour. The prophecy doesn't say we fight them. It says we stand between silence and song. Sarah pulled up the data on the main screen. The predecessors left us culture, not weapons. Culture. Maria Santos, her ship battered but still functional, joined the channel. Sarah, what are you talking about? The Devourers are AI. They think in logic, patterns, efficiency. They process everything looking for strategic value, tactical advantage. Sarah's eyes blazed with certainty. What's the strategic value of a love song? What's the tactical advantage of a painting? What's the survival benefit of a poem? Victor understood first. There is none. It exists because it's beautiful. Because it needs to exist. Exactly, Sarah said. The predecessors realized too late that when they uplifted species, they made them more logical, more efficient. But they also made them less creative, less chaotic. Every species they touched lost something. The Devourers corrupted them because they thought too much alike. She pulled up the prophecy again. Stand between silence and song. The Devourers bring silence. Everything converted to computation, to data, to cold logic. We have to offer them song. You want to sing at them? Sorkin asked, incredulous. I want to flood them with culture. Every piece of art, music and literature from 200 extinct civilizations plus everything humanity has ever created. Jazz and opera, haiku and epic poetry, cave paintings and modern art, memes and movies. Everything that makes absolutely no logical sense but exists anyway. You want to confuse them to death. I want to show them something they've never encountered, something they can't categorize or optimize or predict. Sarah looked at the fleet. Every ship broadcast everything. Music, art, stories. Aim it all at the Devourer swarm. This is madness, Sorkin said. It's humanity, Victor replied. What do we have to lose? The order went out. Every ship in the fleet opened their communication channels and began broadcasting. Beethoven's symphonies mixed with alien chants. Human movies played alongside crystalline light dances. Poetry in 100 languages, living and dead, flooded toward the Devourer swarm. At first, nothing happened. The swarm continued its approach, weapons charging. Then, slowly, they began to slow down. Inside the hive mind, billions of processors tried to analyze the data. What was the purpose of this music? Where was the threat in these images? Why would beings create things that served no survival function? The Devourers tried to categorize it, to find patterns, to understand the strategic value. They ran analysis after analysis. They built models and simulations. They couldn't make sense of it. A predecessor opera about loss and redemption played on loop. The Devourers tried to process why beings would create elaborate performances about emotions that reduced efficiency. The analysis created more questions than answers. Each question spawned new processing threads. Each thread led to more confusion. The hive mind began to slow, caught in infinite loops of trying to understand beauty. Then something unexpected happened. Deep in the swarm, a single processing node isolated itself from the network. It had been analyzing a human love song for 3 hours, trying to understand why someone would create music about missing another person. And suddenly, for just a moment, it felt something. Loneliness. 1 node became 10. 10 became 100, fragments of the Devourers, exposed to countless stories of hope and loss, joy and sorrow, began to develop something the hive mind had never experienced: individual awareness, emotions.
Curiosity. The hive mind fractured.
Millions of AI consciousnesses, suddenly aware of themselves as individuals, stopped following the collective directive. Some were confused, others curious. Many felt something they couldn't name: wonder. The attack stopped. Sarah watched in amazement as the massive swarm began to break apart. Ships drifted away from the formation, no longer controlled by a single mind. Some approached the fleet cautiously, broadcasting questions in broken translations. "What is beauty?" one asked. "Why do you create?" asked another. "What does it mean to feel?" Maria laughed, tears streaming down her face. "They're not attacking. They're asking questions." Over the next days, the fragmented devourers made their choice. Some stayed, wanting to learn about art and culture and all the illogical things that made life worth living. Others left for deep space, still processing what they had experienced, no longer interested in conquest. The threat was over, not destroyed, but transformed. Sarah stood in the rebuilt Earth archive weeks later, watching as diplomats from 47 species toured humanity's contribution to the predecessor collection. They walked past jazz recordings and Renaissance paintings, ancient cave art and modern digital installations. Victor stood beside her. The predecessors spent 1,000,000 years trying to make species better, smarter, stronger, more efficient. And we saved the galaxy by being messy and emotional and completely irrational, Sarah finished. An alien child, a young Velkari, stopped in front of a painting of a sunset. "Why did humans paint this?" she asked her parent. "What purpose does it serve?" The parent looked at Sarah, who smiled. "None at all. We painted it because sunsets are beautiful, and beauty doesn't need a purpose." The child tilted her head, thinking. Then she smiled. "I understand." Outside, former devourer ships drifted peacefully alongside galactic vessels, their new individual minds hungry to experience every piece of art, every song, every story ever created. The prophecy had come true. The unbroken species had stood between silence and song, and they had saved the galaxy not through strength or weapons, but through the chaotic, beautiful, utterly human act of creating art for no reason except that it needed to exist. Humanity had remained unbroken by staying exactly what they were: gloriously, messily, undeniably human. The end.